In 2019, Disney released a computer-animated remake of The Lion King directed by Jon Favreau that was basically a shot-for-shot version of the hand-drawn movie we're all familiar with. It was a very expensive tech demo, and while the technology certainly was impressive, that seemed like the only reason to make it, especially with how closely it followed the original. Now we have a prequel titled Mufasa the Lion King, and at least something this had going for it was that it will be an entirely new story. It's also directed by Barry Jenkins, who's proven himself a very good filmmaker with movies like Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, both of which present sensitive portraits of their characters. So how does he fare jumping into this big franchise movie? I honestly did not have much of a reaction watching it, as the story was not one I found particularly compelling. It serves as an origin story for Mufasa and Scar, showing them meeting as cubs and then growing up together. We of course know what path both of these are going to take, and it's often a challenge for prequels to show characters getting to the point where we're most familiar with them. However, a lot of this movie primarily consists of them walking from one location to the next, and the conversations lack the necessary spark or intrigue to capture my interest. The way the familiar Lion King elements introduced felt especially forced. You can practically see the arrows on the screen pointing out the pivotal iconography we all know from the other movies. Like I said, this is often a tricky part of prequels, but there's still a way to do it naturally. Scar, or Taka as he's called here, will obviously turn evil, and I thought the reasoning presented here was contrived. I just never felt the brotherly bond between Mufasa and Scar, and so the emotional moments did not have the intended effect on me. One thing I did find a little interesting was the political subtext involving the divide between the different lion prides. There's a commentary here on the dangers of looking down on others just for being different, even when they're the same species, and the necessity to fight back against those who want to create division. Much like with Xavier and Magneto in X-Men and Optimus Prime and Megatron in Transformers 1, Mufasa and Scar's dynamic here involves the different ideologies affecting their bond, and you can particularly draw historical parallels between Mufasa and Martin Luther King Jr. However, that was the only aspect of the characters that jumped out at me. Much like the previous film, Timon and Pumbaa brings some life to the proceedings with their comedic commentary. The movie even throws in what felt to me like a nod to The Lion King 1.5, with that point of view of what happened during the events of the first movie, so that got a smile out of me. Timon has honestly been a character who has always meant a lot to me for whatever reason, and I think Billy Eichner does a great job voicing the role in these new movies, nicely filling in Nathan Lane's shoes. I cannot help but smile when I see him, even in this hyper-realistic animation style. Regarding the animation, it's still impressive on a technical level how they can make everything look lifelike, even if I did not feel that much awe at the locations. It's hard to get too excited seeing these realistic looking lions walking along plain fields and snowy mountains. Watching the remake, I had this thought of being stunned how far technology had come, but Mufasa just gives us more of the same. One of the biggest complaints people had about the remake had to do with the expressions on the animals. The filmmakers do seem to have listened to those concerns, and for this movie, they've tried to make them look a lot more expressive. The very first shot of Simba's daughter, Kiara, is even her walking right up to the camera, so we can see how much more expressive her facial features are. And yes, it is interesting they've incorporated a character from the direct-to-video sequels into this. Unless I'm forgetting something, I believe this is the first of these reimaginings of Disney's animated movies to incorporate lore from one of those sequels. Although if Mufasa is a big hit, I would not be surprised if they remake Simba's Pride in this style next. Lin-Manuel Miranda was brought in to write the songs, but I probably won't remember any of these tunes. These are not bad songs by any means, but they are not ones that'll stick with me, and I even found it a little jarring when the characters started singing. The film reuses several cues from Hans Zimmer's score for The Lion King, which really highlight to me how magnificent a score it was, and I personally think it's the best music he has ever composed. For a film that presents a new story, Mufasa the Lion King does rely a lot on your memories of the original Lion King, and not a whole lot more. Even though I never thought about how Mufasa became king, that does not mean it's not a story worth telling. However, as presented in this movie, this was not information that added anything to the character, and there were parts where I even felt it drag. It's not something that have much impact on my view of the Lion King world and its lore, and I won't be thinking much about what transpired here again.